welcome. Hopefully the next few hours and tomorrow will run smoothly. I'll start with a thought experiment. So that has helped me think of the questions at the center of this workshop. So imagine if you could only learn from your direct experience, okay? And this isn't a very hard thing to imagine, probably, because of course that's the experience of all animals, except for us. Right? So all animals learn from their experiences. And now imagine learning only from language. Right? So this is something that it's a source of knowledge that humans have. And of course, the reality is that we learn from both. But thinking about the two extremes, I think helps crystallize the question of what might we be learning from these sources and how they interact. Although this is self-evident to probably everyone here, that of course you learn certain things from language, you learn certain things from your own direct experiences. The tradition in cognitive science has been to focus on the direct experiences. So for example, this will be familiar to many of you, the semantic ignition models, the model of Rogers and McClelland. Here, you learn concepts from learning covariation among the various perceptual and functional properties. The labels, which are part of the model, so a canary is a canary, is named a canary, it serves a somewhat ancillary purpose. The model doesn't need to learn that a canary is a thing out in the world. That thingness is part of the input to the model. What the model does is learn that canaries fly, that canaries are yellow, from sort of an analog of direct experience. In contrast, some strands of modern AI research have tended to focus on language as the sole source of knowledge, in large part because, of course, it's an easier problem. We can digitize text, so on. We don't have to have fully embodied robots trying to learn from the world. How good is learning only from language? Well, as of 2011, it was good enough to beat the top 2 Jeopardy players. So this is knowledge gleaned entirely from language. Of course, it was hand curated. It didn't just accidentally become really good at Jeopardy. It's being fed a lot of, precisely chosen knowledge. But we've come a long way in these 9 years. And I'll give you, many of you have probably seen examples of GPT-3 output. I'll give you a few that I came across over the last couple of days, just in case you haven't. Okay, so some questions. One question is what recent successes in natural language processing tell us about the kind of information that is and is not embedded in language. Notice that this question is distinct from whether humans learn this information from language. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, maybe some do. But it's, as a first step, it's useful to ask, is that information in the language in the first place? This is, of course, has been made easier by having large corpora of digitized text. And already, training on books, training on Wikipedia has produced some interesting results that some speakers will be sharing. But what happens when you add to kind of regular static text, so not just things like Wikipedia, which will tell you what Jeopardy the game is, what Puffin is, but also things like social media posts, Reddit, which contains not just sort of dry factual information, but of course things like interviews. This was a top post from a couple days ago, which an hour or so in, a few hours in, had 45,000 comments pertaining to what advice you would give a 14-year-old about starting high school. That's a lot of information that is here being conveyed through language. So the answer, at least if you believe these kinds of results, is I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Here's my friend Chas Firestone having a conversation with GPT-3 about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. And does it know what a hot dog is? Well, if you had this conversation with a person, you'd certainly assume the person knew what they were talking about. And this is, of course, all without having any perceptual information or direct functional information about hot dogs. Here's another example. Jay, I first met Tim when he was when I was an RA with you, and he was an undergrad working on a summer project at the CNBC.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. So Tim tweeted this out a few days ago. He gave GPT-3 an abstract of a recent paper of his and asked it to write a review. And here's the first paragraph. This is with barely any context. That's weird. Right. Okay. So we can ask a more specific question. Does perceptual information embedded in the structure of language affect people's knowledge of what things look like, sound like? Judy will be presenting some work, I think, speaking to this question from what blind people know about, congenitally blind people know about color. And based on older work, we already know that they know quite a bit. It's not the same as what sighted people know, but it's interesting because, of course, blind people, while they can experience many visual properties through other senses, color is not one of them, but it can be experienced and learned about through language. We'll be hearing from some people about language in development, children's cognitive development, both how language might facilitate or augment normal development, which of course language is a normal part of our development. It's part of our natural world, but also how it is maybe constrained by it. In my talk, I'll be talking a bit about vocabulary as kind of cognitive units, chunks. We can ask, and I think some people will be speaking, people's talks will be speaking to this, about cross-linguistic differences in vocabulary and grammatical categories. Does that mean that people people getting input from these different languages might be going on to learn different things? We have a paper just out today that sort of speaks to this about how distributional semantics of different languages encode gender. And the one slide summary is that some languages encode stronger gender stereotypes than others, and it correlates with people's implicit association test results on gender career associations, whether men work and women stay home, those kinds of gender stereotypes. Some people might be learning more from language or less from language than others. What might looking at those individual differences tell us? And then how does language and other embodied and various embodied experiences, actually learning from and being in the perceptual motor world, how does that interact? How much grounding does one need before it, you want to consider language output as meaningful? Okay. Now, in discussing these questions, I hope we don't spend too long in thought experiments. Most of us here are experimentalists and empirically minded.